So here's something interesting. South Africa has a youth voter problem and it needs to be fixed very fast. Well, that's if democracy is to remain viable in this country. The youth aren't voting, and although this is a phenomenon that is prevalent in many other countries around the continent, it's important to look at the data and some of the reasons why young people aren't interested at all, and better yet, we need to start actioning reforms that will start to turn the tide. Okay, let's dive in. About 35% of South Africa's population is considered youth. Now, youth or young people in the South African context are usually those considered to be between the ages of 18 and 35. Stats SA, the National Stats Service of South Africa, estimates that in 2022, there were 20.6 million people classified between the ages of 20 and 39. 5.1 million of those people were youth between the ages of 15 and 19. But now let's talk voters. Out of the 25.9 million registered voters noted on the 14th of June 2023, only 213,000 were between the ages of 18 and 19. Yes, only 200,000. 3.7 million young people who fall into the 20 to 29 age category were registered, and 6.6 million people in the 30 to 39 age category were ready to cast their votes. All three of these categories make up 10.5 million or 40.76% of registered voters in South Africa. Registering is one thing, but voting is another. What's even more scary is looking at the 2019 voter data. Only 19% of all eligible 18 to 19-year-olds actually registered, and only 15% of the eligible 18 to 19-year-olds cast their vote. When we take a look at those who are a little bit older, only 30% of all eligible 20 to 29-year-olds voted. And in the age category between 30 to 39, only 43% of eligible voters cast a ballot. The youth not registering in significant numbers or even bothering to vote contributed substantially to the 2019 national elections, delivering the lowest voter turnout since 1994. What these figures raise are questions. Questions about the future of South Africa's electoral process and the legitimacy of any democratically elected government. So what exactly is causing all of this voter apathy? Why don't the youth vote? Many young South Africans feel that there is a lack of accountability from political parties and politicians themselves. Distrust in the electoral and political processes because of corruption in government structures is another issue of importance. It's broadly estimated by Unite for Mzansi's state capture case study that through mismanagement and corruption, 1.5 trillion rand was lost to South Africa between 2014 and 2019. Continued high unemployment leads to further youth dissatisfaction with formal political and economic processes. According to Stats South Africa, youth in South Africa continue to be disadvantaged in the labor market with an unemployment rate higher than the national average. Young people are not effectively represented on candidate lists. They don't know how the government works and why their vote matters. But others have argued that youth are not necessarily apathetic to politics, but rather just dissatisfied with government's overall performance. Some youth opt out because they do not know who to even vote for, and they have no trust that the political parties available to them will resolve the issues that matter most to them, like jobs, crime, corruption, poor public services. So how do we fix this? What's most important for young people to understand is that, in fact, they have the numbers to win an election. There are plus minus 14 million unregistered young people in this country. For context, in the last election, the ruling party only got 10 million votes. If those 14 million people, actually, even half of those young people, if they showed up, registered, voted for one party, they could reshape the landscape of South African politics. But the truth is that they won't. The IEC's 2021 local government voter participation survey found that less than half, or 45%, of the adult citizenry believe that the youth is interested in elections. The youth's population size makes them a priority, whether they are registered to vote or not. Their numbers mean that their votes can determine election outcome. Although it remains speculation that if the youth were to band together and vote in large numbers, the political parties would have to take their concerns seriously. It's worth recognizing that citizens are not counted as part of the youth forever. Since 2004, the number of adults above 30 years of age who show up at the voting booth has remained steady, and sometimes it's even grown. The argument can thus be made that government clearly prioritizes the concerns of older generations because they dominate the votes. It's important to note that the lived experience of being a young person is, however, transient. It's not forever. Young people get older and their needs and views on how to effect change evolves. Political action becomes a must as they get older and start to have families. This means that any study of young people has to take into account both the time during which the group exists and the passage of historical time. Also, it's interesting to note that 2019 youth voter demographics were skewed towards females. More females were registered to vote than males, 53% to 47%. So how do we get the South African youth to vote? Well, poor political knowledge is one of the issues that results in poor voter turnout amongst young people. To combat this, implementing a required group-based practical and hands-on civic education curriculum in social situations and schools will encourage more young people to get involved in politics and help them build their internal political efficacy that's required for political involvement. Another possibility is to offer a carrot for the youth to vote, whether that might take the shape of NSFAS credits or something of youth significance, not just free coffee that doubles as free marketing. Broader social changes have weakened young people's sense of belonging to a community and to the country. They don't feel heard, which in turn has exacerbated their political disengagement. Reduce the barriers to registration. This will increase voter turnout. Youth turnout will grow with changes like same-day registration, which can enable young people to register when they go to the polls, even if they missed the registration deadline. Possibly, the introduction of digital voting procedures can boost youth voter turnout. Voting still takes place on paper in South Africa. To capitalize on young people's digital engagements and footprint, digital possibilities should be investigated. Finding a way to verify digital voting will increase participation, but then again, there is still great distrust in the digital process at the moment. But with more youth being familiar with the digital universe, it's only a matter of time before this type of voting makes sense. Include young people on the candidates list. The inclusion of young people is likely to increase their political participation. Most political parties are guilty of sidelining the youth. Give them support and collaborate with them to address issues affecting young people. Listen to their ideas for the future. Actually support the implementation of those ideas. The best way to convince young people of the importance of their vote is to make an effort to make their voice and vote count. For those interested in the future of the youth vote, it is evident that the issue of upward and social mobility will be key. The truth is that political parties that can show that they are attuned to young people's desires for upward social mobility are likely to get young people to vote for them. And with so many possible voters, it seems that the youth vote might finally be make or break. There are many good reasons why young people should vote and participate in politics. But what lies in front of them are issues that no one seems willing to address. And that in turn makes it harder for them to see any value in South African politics. Amandla.